Welcome, welcome. It has been a very long pause. I hope you had a good time, whatever you were doing. But now we're back with Sky against Cerberus. And this should be the greatest match of the week, in my opinion. I picked this out to be the match of the week. And before we dive deeper into the matchup and discuss the players and the history and so on, I want to throw to you, Thana, because of course you're new here, you're a guest. So what do you think of these two teams, just without any further ado, without any qualifications? What is your impression?
Yeah, I mean, I talked with Milky before the stream, and I think he talked about Artemis on the bot lane of Sky, so no on Cerberus, and I think he is a pretty decent AD carry. And
You could
then
say
I
that, yeah.
and when we talked about Lee Sin players, I think Traktar was mentioned by one of you guys, so he is probably a good Lee Sin player as well. So maybe we see something from him as well. But other than that, I never saw games from both of those two teams. I just know that Cerberus was like one of the stronger teams in a winter split. I think they even won it. And I think in playoffs and final they played 3-2 against Gambit. So I think Cerberus is really strong right now. But of course the junglers may be missing for another time. So we have this substitute jungler again. Maybe.
True. He already went very deep, so I'll throw to Rebel instead for the next one. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Who are the two most important players on each of these teams, in your opinion? Rebel, I have an inkling what you're going to say.
Am I answering both of these two?
I guess you can pick one of the two, whatever you feel more strongly about.
Okay. I have answers for both. I think with Cerberus's roster swaps, it's a little harder to answer, so I'll stick with Burst the Sky. There's an obvious answer, which is Drakthar. That's obvious for a number of reasons. He's the only player in the... Well, actually, he's probably one of two players that have an international following between Levi and, of course, the Drakthar fan club. But I think Aamina is actually the other one that I really put on a very high pedestal. Not to say that Glory isn't important to the team, more so that Drakthar is oftentimes the person that kind of makes things run to begin with, and Aamina is somebody they can rely on very, pretty much later into the phases of the game. Glory fills both of those from time to time, right? Like Glory kind of is just like the do anything they need him to do type of player, which is why I think it's actually more important that Drakthar and Aamina are the focus. Reverse this guy.
Certainly. And on the other side, Cerberus is very hard to say because we've only seen one series from this weird iteration. We don't even know if this is going to be the same Cerberus that played yesterday. But do you have any guess, Thana? Do you have any idea who the most important player is, apart from Artemis being the best player?
Okay, apart from him, I think Taki as a support, because every great ADC needs to have a great support to kind of back him up, because otherwise he would fall behind in early game and on laning phase and stuff. So I think Taki is really important.
Taki is SGB.
I agree with Taki, actually.
I mean, we all agree with Taki because we love Taki here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so probably like the support. He needs to be good with the ADC together to have a great lane.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, he was the number one support in winter, so even though maybe nowadays it's Taki, Ronop, he's still a very strong support player. But let's talk about the history. There was a very important matchup in winter. Just 2 months ago, these two teams met as the last series of the year of the winter regular season. Cerberus came in 13-0. They looked at the perfect split, only Sky in their way, and suddenly they lost 0-2. Sky won against them. Cerberus then grew super scared of Sky and decided to pick the third seed instead, stomping Luxury and facing Gum in the finals, so they didn't have to play against Sky ever again. This is the first time they meet after this disaster. So, Rebel, how did Sky manage to take down the monster that was Ego Cerberus in winter?
You're taking me back a pretty decent distance, because I can remember the series incredibly vividly, because we were covering it at the time, and it was like, if they had lost 0-2, there was a chance that Saigon could come back and end up actually taking the qualification staff from Sky. And so they're winning even a game, let alone both games against the side of Cerberus. Ended up with them taking the playoff spot. And in terms of how they did it, the thing that surprised us about Sky for the entirety of the split was their decisiveness. The thing that really did it, that I think culminated in the final victory, was that there was not really a team in the VCS that had these incredible mid games, right? Like you had sometimes what you'd see is like Gem, or you would see more specifically Cerberus have great early games. But if they were quiet early games, oftentimes it kind of stayed quiet through the mid game. They'd take objectives and things like that, you know, get off to a 2,000 gold lead before spiking into like teamfight territory, and they could just rely on that. But for the first time ever, Burst the Sky out of nowhere, they take this really aggressive stance in the mid lane or in the mid game, and they say, okay, we're going to use a powerful like early jungler in the mid game and skirmish as much as we can and keep this gold lead to within a reasonable like striking distance. And they just outperformed in team fights. It was a very like crazy rarity to see that happen, because no one had really tested Cerberus' team fighting most of the splits, but for the first time someone was able to keep up with them during the laning phase and took the 2-0.
And Thana, what do they have to do to repeat that kind of performance to get the win today after Cerberus looked revitalized yesterday? A different Cerberus still, a different jungler, a different top laner, even a different mid laner, so definitely a different team altogether, but still a strong team. So what does Sky have to do to once again overcome the Cerberus?
I think just overcoming the jungle would help really well in such a matchup, because if you have like a lead in the jungle, like we saw in the last series with Levi just beating everybody on this, if you get such a lead on a player like Traktar in such a matchup where the enemy jungler is maybe a decent player, but is just thrown into this team as a substitute right now, then you can maybe like impact the whole map, and with that maybe get a lead to win the series. So I think jungle is a really crucial position in this matchup right now.
And talking about jungle, let's turn our eyes on this weird chimera that came out of merging Cerberus with the puppies. Is it more a hellhound right now or more a puppy rebel? Which of the two?
I again, to talk about the fact that we don't know yet, the closest kind of conclusion I could come to is that they do look better than what they looked like in week number 1 when they played against Gam. Now, in fairness, they played against Gam, which is one thing. But I mean, to come out with a performance that like Poss had, which I think was really electrifying. Jane stepping in is like not necessarily a first timer, but definitely somebody we consider still a rookie within like the scene. And to have a performance like that, to be able to keep Fook One inside of the game, to be able to keep their top side in a competitive state, I think it showed adaptability at minimum. I'm not willing to say that this is the roster that they should be running for the remainder of the splits necessarily, but I will say that if they can keep up what happened between their two solo lanes, if that kind of improvement is to be expected from the two of them, then this roster does have quite a bit more fearsomeness behind it than we might have thought.
And yesterday's series did show some solid growth. I mean, they started at 0, so they were only going to be able to grow, but they did put in some nice work and some good performances. But I still was left with a lot of questions and a lot of doubts about Fook One. So is he as bad as I think, Thana?
I don't think so. It's just the missing like the missing XP with the roster, because he just probably wasn't like set as a starter from the beginning, because Ego was just such a great jungler, and he just gets thrown into it. Maybe he didn't even scrim with the team that much. So I think he just looks bad because the synergy maybe isn't there at the moment. But I think he can grow into it because he had some good games. And if Ego just misses a lot of games now, then maybe he just needs to grow into this team as their starting jungler, and then he can maybe fulfill this role.
And with that, we're already moving into pick and bans. Very quick start here on the second series. I mean, we had a long pause, so it makes sense. But let's take a look what these two teams are drafting. Cerberus on the blue side, Burst the Sky on the red side. We have Ryze, Lee Sin, and Syndra removed from the pool. And we have J4, Thresh, and Zeri, red side bans from Burst the Sky.
Yeah, no one is ever allowed to let Artemis have Zeri. The first team that does it is officially banned from the VCS, or they will no longer be broadcast on VCS English, because that might be the worst mistake any team will ever make.
Yeah, and like at the moment we just saw the Tsingtao pick up, and I think that it's a great first pick. Like we saw last game with the Lee Sin first pick, just a good early game jungler. I think he had the best performance on the Tsingtao. So giving him this kind of option definitely makes sense, especially against such a strong lineup from vs Sky, with a little bit more early game perspective from him. Is a really great pickup.
I kind of like what just happened here, because Burst the Sky had the option to potentially take like their priority support, but then of course you give the option of Ron OP, which I know you talked about them being super important for Cerberus here. So if they want, what they could do is they could take a solo lane, potentially get blinded into something Burst the Sky could grab up. Or they take a support here, blind, into anything that you could bring out from the side of Burst the Sky. But again, that takes a little bit the agency away from Ron OP, since now you have an idea, okay, what are they going to play? Do you want to play Thresh into this? You want to play Alistar into this? You want to play Tahm Kench into this? The ball is now back into Elio's wheelhouse, especially, I think actually Cerberus might have just done him a service, because of course the Leona oftentimes ends with Elio not being in a very favorable position, so we're gonna thank them very much for that ability.
Glory's evolution picked up, the double Glory's evolution. That's always good to see. Good performer. I'm interested, not actually interested is the wrong word to choose. I'm a little confused by how much Sky chose to change their style and their formula. It's fourth game already on this Aphelios, so no Kaiser to be seen. Very different style.
Yeah, I think for the Kaiser you really need like those hard engaged team comps where Kaiser can just jump into it, and at the moment it just wouldn't fit into it, or the the jungler and the top laner only like playing those too much of frontliners who just engage for your AD carry. So I kind of like the feels, and of course he's like one of the meta ADCs right now, just high range, just being a hyper carry, just having some more like scaling in the team definitely makes sense in my opinion. And together with the Victor, you just have always a win condition to have those two on your team, because if it goes to the late game, then you can definitely win some team fights.
They decide to lock Elio into Braum duty, which is completely reasonable, especially after, I don't know, after they ban out Nautilus, which is perfectly fine as like a ban, although, again, that's something that like Leonas tend to be like, all right, that's fine taking into. It's a little strange that they don't go to something like Thresh or something along those lines that can still deny Leona. Thresh is oh yeah, my bad. They banned Thresh, of course they did, why wouldn't they? Yeah, if that's the case, I guess Tahm Kench is the only other thing that you would consider, and it's just dependent on what Elio's fine with. So here, I guess being able to block out rockets is pretty useful. Being able to block out, especially against the Gwen, I think this is super underrated pick for being able to deny her team fight. Her directionality is it's torn through too many teams for me to not be like, hey, this is kind of reminiscent of what Ornn was doing to teams a couple years ago when he first came out, and then everyone's like, oh, let's just pick Braum, block it, and then we don't have to worry anymore.
Gwen super late in this draft. We've seen a lot of priority, a lot of attention early on in drafts put on Gwen. Now she's open in the second stage. We see an AP, AD, AP setup for Cerberus. And now a last pick for Burst the Sky. What do you want to see, Thana?
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. I think was good to ban out the Renekton. Otherwise, Renekton would be maybe a pickup. But now I think could work. He has a really good performance in this last series, sure. So why not? Just having some more of the split push. I mean, some Nars even go Hull Breaker first nowadays. So I think that could definitely work, and they get just a little bit more team fighting power with it. Always a little bit difficult to team fight with Nar if he isn't mega, but I think he can do that. So it kind of rounds up the team comp in a really good style.
On one hand, I can appreciate the team fighting that's got set up from Burst the Sky with the Gnar that comes in the top side. Although I don't love the matchup necessarily into Gwen. Anything that can kill mini Gnar is always of stress to me, especially when there's a Xin Zhao on the team. So Fluke 1 doesn't really have that much effort. And it's also a pretty slow comp where it's like, okay, you've got Victor, Viego, and Aphelios. So you don't really have something to really push pacing in the beginning of the game. So my worries about whether or not Burst the Sky is going to be able to actually make an impact fast enough to have any sort of play. We talked about the mid-game spike being really important last time they played Cerberus. It's not the same Cerberus, but they don't have anywhere near that. You do run the risk of potentially just being way too slow for a game like this.
So let me actually put you on the spot. Are they going to be able to do it? Will Sky win this game? No?
No.
Thana, do you agree?
I don't think so as well.
Oh, so 2 Cerberus / puppy / whatever it is that is on my screen right now. Predictions here. Match of the week. We still have Milky and Marby for you. Maybe a little too early as we are staring at this screen. So before we go to our beautiful casters, let's talk about Fook1 and Pos, because that Gwen Jinzhao matchup kind of peculiar. Haven't really seen these two champions together. I don't really expect much from Jane in the early game, so I think there's either focus going to be put on the top lane or the bot lane. Which of the two would you prefer from Fook1's perspective? Maybe Thana first.
Yeah, just ganking Mininar is always an option. You can always kill him if he is Mininar, and if he is too near the enemy tower. So because normally he pushes in because he is range versus mini. So just get him some kills, get some kills on pause, and then it's easy going from there.
It's quick enough team fight kind of transition if you were to do that. And also with the expectation now that you have Aphelios Braum, that lane isn't really going to dominate up against a Jinx and a Leona. The threat is there that lane goes fine for Artemis and Route OP when they're some of the best in the game. So if you got 2 winning side lanes, and as long as your Akali is not throwing their life away, or even if they are and it just doesn't matter, like Kadi in the previous series, I think we're feeling fine. If any BTS coaches speak English and are watching the stream, can you please make Ryuk learn another champion? I'm pretty sure it's like Renekton, and if it's not Renekton, it's Gnar. Have them learn like Yorick or something. At least force like a weird ban from everybody and give us a couple interesting games here and there.
And with those wise words, it's finally time to head onto the Rift for the match of the week. Game number 1, Sky against Cerberus with Marby and Milky.
Thank you very much, You'll Wait. I just want to follow straight off from Rebel's points about Ryuk. Now, Rebel having to do that off the top of his head, so I decided I'd help him and pull up some Ryuk stats. Last year, Ryuk, 19 of his total 48 games on the Renekton and Gnar. Likes to play the Jax Camille split push champions. We'll see, though, whether he does get the option of split pushing in this game. And one of the matchups I want to focus on the most here, Marby, is Glory against Jane. Because Jane, having had 2 games so far, both of those against Flash, I think Jane, while they played well, I don't think they did well.
You're gonna need to expand your vocabulary a little bit, because they played well, but they didn't play well as a bit of a throw. But
you know what I mean.
I kind of get it. I think they played our lane pretty well, but they weren't like stomping heads or anything along those lines. They were.
So in other words, they played well, but they didn't play well.
No, that's shut up. It's gonna be interesting to see. I think they're gonna have a much harder time coming up against Glory, who is generally one of our best mid laners in the VCS, and it's off to he's picked himself a very rough matchup, at least in the early lane. He's given up the option to go for this first strike to Glory as well, so he's going to be trying to farm gold off of this Akali as much as possible, as there's a lot of a scuffle on the top side. And we're coming back to this Gnar. I'm not a huge fan of Gnar because I do not like the unreliability of this Rage Bar. It's very easy to play around from the side of Cerberus. But looking across the rest of the team, it's pretty much one of the only champions they could have picked that gives them that engage that the comp is sorely lacking, whilst also being able to stand up and survive the Gwen at the top side. So I'm completely fine with it coming in here, as we saw a little bit of a poke into the top side from Fook1, returning now to his blue buff, and should be looking to make his way from here. Still, I think, trying to shadow this top side and trying to make sure Pos can get that advantage as best as possible and punish the Gnar when in mini Gnar.
One of the weirdest things for me looking at this composition, this game, is I look at every lane and I think, you know what? I really like BTS's draft. I think they win. And then I look down on CBS's draft, and I remember that they've got Artemis on their team, and it just flips the script entirely, because Artemis can just be so huge, and he's incredible as an ADC, especially here in the VCS. And I really want to be seeing Fuquan looking towards this bottom side, trying to get some kills onto Artemis, because that is the name of the Cerberus game.
Yeah, and I need to see action out of Fuquan in general, as this shouldn't amount to too much, but that's a lot of damage into Alamine. Because I really want to see Cerberus get that advantage, because Sky's composition is actually very good in team fighting and all that, and here's Drakthar caught out though.
Rono P just flashes over the wall, Shield of Daybreak, catches out Drakthar, trying to play aggressive. Was the Burst of Sky jungler bait, he gets punished. Great movement from the Cerberus support to join in for that skirmish.
Yeah, kind of pure greed from the side of Drakthar. He saw his bot lane get completely chunked out in that trade, and didn't decide, I need to sort of back away from these Krugs, because Rono P can just walk in. The bot lane from the side of Burst the Sky is just too low to try and respond, too slow as well, because they had to back right off. So it's just a free pick onto the Viego, and that sets Sky behind. And I was going to say, they only really have a good composition if they can reach sites of team fights first, because they have a very nice counter engage with the Braum and the Victor, but they have very, very poor engage on their own terms. They can't start a lot of fights. As when I say that, Elio's coming up to try and make something happen. Shroud just dissuades the whole thing though.
Yeah, Glory on half health. It doesn't want to risk making an aggressive play, even though Jane didn't have level 6, so no perfect execution available, but good to see Elio being proactive, and that's even on a Braum who's not a champion that we usually visualize as being a roaming support.
Yeah, you found a bit of a gap to match Leona's absence from lane, and from there, Velios and Jinx can just sort of whack each other away, and it's a fairly even matchup. So I do like seeing Braum try and make their way out, as Ryuk's in trouble.
Wind becomes lightning, never mind, just dive in with the audacious charge, flash forward, 3 talent strike, and Fuquan picks up the kill. No teleport available for Ryuk either, so this is just going to be a lot of minions lost in the top lane. Meanwhile, Burst Sky uses opportunity of Fuquan being on the top lane to pick up the first strike of the game.
Yeah, but overall, it is another kill onto the jungler. It's plate gold onto this Gwen, as well as that assist, and they've already built up a very strong CS lead in this top side. So Ryuk is going to be a massive pain point for Burst Sky as this game continues. And while the bot lane is doing fine, they've managed to push it. They managed to do it's a very small advantage. They're doing okay, and they should be very comfortable as the game progresses. And with a dragon pickup, it's not really matching across the map. The gold is going comfortably towards the side of Cerberus, and these two stronger lanes for Burst Sky that we see their focus around isn't really amounting to much, as just catches Fook on the way out with the smite.
And I actually really want to praise Burst of Sky. Yes, they're 1k gold behind, but I'm loving the stylistic choices that they're going for and how they've essentially researched this game and how they've prepared for it, because Drakthar is entirely on this bottom side of the map. He's trying to deny as many resources as he can from Artemis. He knows that Artemis is the win condition for Cerberus, and he does not want to give Artemis any opportunity to get ahead, any opportunity for Rono P to make aggressive plays.
I do worry they can tunnel a little bit onto Artemis. The classic I can always think of is games is the old SKT, where everyone would just try and tunnel on and kill Faker, and that just left these other carries on the sidelines to try to just safely build up, and that is kind of what's happening here.
Yeah.
Jane is down only 10 CS, going to lose out on gold a lot more thanks to this first strike, of course, but Poss in the top side is going insane, getting a lot of free gold, and kind of being able to farm
Well,
Jane
we've
goes
got a
in.
fight in the mid lane. This is a 3v3, but Pos and Fukwon are making their way over. This is going to be huge. Wind becomes lightning. The first kill goes over to Drakthar, who gets a kill onto Leona. Jane going over the wall, but Drakthar is hunting, and Drakthar picks up the double kill. It's Burst the Sky on the offensive. Pos trying to force Drakthar away. Glory is a low. Heartbreaker over the wall. Drakthar will get out, and it's just 2 kills going the way of Burst the Sky. Now the goal dead even between the 2 teams.
Yeah, Jane jumping the gun a little bit, going super deep onto Glory. There's not a lot of health. There's low health on quite a few members of Sky, but Ryuk's got this Mega Gnar available. He just owns this corridor for the next few seconds. That should be more than enough time. Fukwon gets picked.
The delivery with the Gnar. Now they drop down the Glacial Fissure. Artemis Cleanse flashing out of the play. And it's just more and more resources being taken away from Cerberus. Yes, Cerberus got the early lead, but Burst the Sky, they roam better, they play around the Herald better, and now they find themselves in the lead with a lot of gold available courtesy of the Rift. And here's how everything started out in the mid lane.
And we see a very scattered engage from the side of Cerberus. Jane had been chunked out immediately, and Elio flies in alone and gets blown up in this chunk. And now Fukwon and Pos sort of try their best to clap back, but it's too late. 2 of their big members are down, and they don't really want to push into this 4v5, this 3v5. And with Ryuk hitting this Mega Gnar, I thought it was pretty much going to be time it out, just use the zoning to pick up this Herald, but jumps in and finds the jungler, which makes it an easy pickup. They're able to feel much safer. And a good ultimate to just blow the summoner spells from Artemis as well. It's really just a cherry on top of everything.
And I want to go
very
back to
very happy to see that.
I want to go back to what you said as well, Marby. Burst the Sky, they want to be at objectives first. They've got a great composition if Cerberus tried to go into them. And that's exactly what Burst the Sky did. They got into that river first. They forced Cerberus to go into them, and they made their composition work. Whether they can do that over the other objectives that are still to come up in this game, we'll have to wait and see.
It's about 45 seconds towards this next objective, of course, this dragon. So we see Drakthar already on this side, Glory leaning down there to pick up the blue buff. And we're just going to need to see how they can look to control this side. Fukwon is lurking. If they can find a pick onto Glory, this can be massive. But as it is, there's a lot of pressure in this bot side for Burst the Sky.
From Glory, he flashes. And it means the Crescent Guard just lets Glory ride under the safety of his own tower. And guess what? Drakthar wants to play as well. It just shows up. Jane goes into the Twilight Shroud, and it buys enough time. Although Drakthar still thinking about making a play, has that Rift Herald available. And there's a lot of juicy tower plays available on Jane's mid lane outer tower.
And they want to keep this dragon stack going, though. This is priority number 1 for the side versus Sky, and they're fairly happy with pretty much any soul that comes through. I think Ocean would be the least impactful, and as I say it, we get it. Because of a lot of the burst potential on the side of Cerberus, you've got huge bursts coming out from the Akali and the Gwen. As we see Ryuk desperately try and get away, he manages to survive. Doesn't actually burn the flash, which is quite huge. And a drop of the Rift Herald gives Glory everything he needs. And he's well on the way towards his crown.
I do like how Burst the Sky have literally just taken this bottom quadrant of jungle, and they've just told Fukwon that, well, he's not getting any of it, so he can leave and just leave it all to Drakthar. And he's got himself a rather comfortable 22 CS lead over his opposing jungler.
Jane has gone for the chem tank, so that means
we flame.
The threat level has kind of dropped a fair amount. A lot of what Jane really wants to do in this comp is jump in, do as much AoE damage as possible, and let Pos and Artemis do the sort of hit the finishing touches with the rockets from range. And I don't think this is gonna work out fantastically for them. It lets you be a nuisance and give space for Artemis, I suppose, but I don't think that's the play. Might work out for them in the long run, but I really don't think it's the play.
To be honest, I thought the whole Chem Tanker Kali meta had ended. But apparently it hasn't. At least not according to Jane, who still wants to live in Turbo Chem Tanker Kali world. Why, I don't quite know. But we'll see whether...
It's definitely not as strong because you don't get the multiple procs off the Chem Tank as much, but it still functions. It's just not as good. So,
Wait, that wind's become lightning didn't land on Ryuk?
It did, but they timed the audacious charge. Well, the hop was timed well against the audacious charge, so it just sort of bounced off. And we seen Fuguan just feel a little bit out of sorts. He tried matching Drakthar and got blasted, as I'm going to hold that thought.
Good stun onto Jane. The gravity well has been dropped down, but Jane able to sidestep their way out. The Chaos Storm won't quite be able to get on top for long enough to do substantial damage onto the Akali's health bar. As Glory and Drakthar will just try to clear out some vision. Fuquan and Rono P here as well. Do we see a skirmish? Rift Herald will be up in about a minute's time. Zenith Blade now lands. Solar Flare on top. Heartbreaker. Drakthar flashing over the wall. Ryuk here as well. But he's just going to hop his way over the Baron Pit.
Yeah, we see Cerberus first to the play this time, and they're able to punish Drakthar and force out his flash and his ultimate. They didn't really want to commit everything to... Actually, hold that, Ryuk.
Well, Ryuk getting caught out. Rono P and Fuquan with a bit of a death brush. These are two roaming together, trying to find plays. Elio trying to make his way around across the map as well, as we've got a lane swap coming in. Aomine going into the mid lane. Glory dropping down towards this bottom lane. Glory has teleport. Jane doesn't.
Exactly. This is the lane assignment. This is a very nice lane assignment, putting the teleport down into the bot side. As Rift Herald is the play, but there's a reset coming through from Cerberus, and it's given Burst the Sky the opportunity to walk right back into this pit and start it up. This is should be a fairly free objective as long as Elio and Aomine in particular is able to get in place, but a bit slow from the rotation from the mid lane.
The sooner the fight starts, the better for Burst the Sky, because Glory is here. This is a 5v4. They force Jane away with half health. The Baron, oh, pardon me, not the Baron. The Rift Herald are down to under 3,000. The Gwen is now here. The fight about to start. Who gets the Rift Herald? Not quite sure, but the fight has begun. Crescent Guard already dropped it down. Glacial Fissure on the top. Jane trying to get into the backline. Really low. Ryuk not going to be able to find the kill on Jane. And now Aomine and Glory are on the back foot. Zap sidestepped well. Artemis, does he want to flash over the wall? He's dropping down the rock. He's dropping down the damage, but not quite enough damage. Overall, 3 kills for nothing. Cerberus coming out on top, and Fuquan picking up the Rift Herald. It's all going the way of Cerberus.
Yeah, huge pickups. Sky's attention very much split. Not willing to just try and burst the fight. I mean, they can't engage the fight on their own terms, really. Not with that Ryuk only being about halfway through his bar. And it's a big team fight win for the side of Cerberus. They pick up this Rift Herald and get 2 charges off. We see it's good zone control, but the fight kicks off, and Ryuk, he takes so long to pop into this Meganar, and he just knocks them away. He doesn't swing them towards the wall. He doesn't get a stun. He's not able to get any real strong setup for his carries to do the damage. And it just means that, well, the damage is done. The carries are sprinting away, trying to hold on to their lives as the front line falls apart.
See, for me, what I feel like one of the issues with the fight there for Burst Sky, maybe it's one of the issues with the composition, is you look at the champions on the team, and for me anyway, they all want to do different things. You look at the likes of a Braum. He wants to be dropping down his passive on as many people as possible. Same for the Victor. Aphelios, really good at multi-target, at least when he's got the rapid fire. The Runan's Hurricane doesn't have that at the moment. But then you look towards Drakthar. He wants to be getting those resets. And in that fight, it just felt like Burst Sky, they couldn't lock down a single member. They couldn't unload all of their damage onto one champion to get that critical reset off for Drakthar.
Yeah, the front line... the front line does want to try and dive in and hit that burst, especially Drakthar. Drakthar is kind of the only one that really cares about that big single target to pick off those resets, because Ryuk, of course, wants to just just jump in and do as much CC to as many people as possible. So But it is that big problem where if Drakthar isn't really able to pick off those resets, you kind of lose a huge chunk of what is your front line, because you basically are trying to drain tank and health and regen your way through those fights. And Ryuk, yeah, he's only strong half the time as a tanky member. So if you don't get your team fight set up just right, it can go terribly wrong, as we saw there. Pretty much unless you're able to burst out one of the big members, but, you know, Jane's gone for this tank build, so harder to burst out. Poss is immune. He is Gwen. Yeah. It's really only Artemis, and Artemis has so much range that they can just hang back and wait for it to really start kicking off before they try and actually engage into anywhere of the threat range of Glory and Almina.
Good flash from Glory out of the solar flare. Also means he gets to preserve the crown of the Shattered Queen. Now teleports coming in from Cerberus. Drakthar on the flank. However, Almina and Elio really far away from this, so Burst Sky will not be able to aggress any further. And they will just head on over to what I don't quite know. Almina is going to farm up in the mid wave. Everyone else is pretty much just going to back.
Yeah, there's nothing really on the map for anyone to start taking right now. The dragon was taken off the map by Cerberus as well. Just off that back of that last big play. So just a couple of teleports traded, and that's not really going to amount to too much. Baron is going to be alive, but it's not really on the table for either team unless there's a huge team fight win from either side. So we're kind of just waiting off these next 2 minutes, trying to see, I don't know, where do we go from here? We're just trying to put as much gold into the pockets of Almina and Glory as possible. Glory's picked up his second item, so he's quite comfortable right now with that Shadow Flame. But yeah, we just need to see the damage really coming in from Almina. Probably pick up on and Lord Dominic's regard, so that Akali's tank build sort of plays against her.
Now, we do have a bit of a lull state and an opportunity to talk a little bit about both teams. Cerberus and Burst Sky both making it into playoffs in Winter Split. Burst Sky finishing third in Winter. Cerberus going on to win the split. Now, I went on and I did some analysis on both of the teams over the course of the Spring Split so far. High in-depth analysis. And I came to a conclusion. And from my analysis, I found Cerberus beat Flash, Flash beat Saigon Buffalo beat Luxury, and Luxury beat Burst Sky, so therefore Cerberus are better than Burst Sky. And there is no triangle here. It's literally a direct line.
There's no circle of suck to work around, but we yeah, I mean, sure that is how it works, but if you consider,
right,
we have a whole other tournament. No, look, Burst Sky.
Don't you dare bring in SEA games again.
No, look, Burst Sky. I feel like that they have shown a lot of that first series against Luxury was a little bit of a fluff, and I do agree that Poss, in particular, has been a big step up for the side of Cerberus. They just needed that mental reset, I think, coming out from the solo laners, and it's common, and it's been very good for them. But now Burst Sky, they have completely abandoned this bot side. They are not happy. They do not care about these Drakes. They do not want to keep the stack going. They just want to control this top side, but they're actually a little bit too scared to do so. They do not have pressure. They can't push really far into the river. They don't feel comfortable. So they're not really being able to make the calls and direct where the attention of the map is. And it's just sort of letting the game get a little bit away from them. Gold is even, so it's not completely out of their hands yet, but they do not have the control of the map. They do not have the dreaded word tempo. They do not get to decide what happens.
I'm really glad you brought up this point, because I was about to bring it up myself, because it feels like Cerberus are the ones who are in control of the game. Maybe that's just because the most recent fight was won by Cerberus, so that thought is fresh in my mind. But when you look at it objectively, everything is very close. The gold is, less than 1k between them. 2 Drakes for both sides. I was trying to check how many towers, but I can't see it, so I'm actually going to have to look. It's 3 towers to 2. So again, very close. So I kind of want to get an understanding of what can we expect over the next 10 minutes. Is it okay if BTS just sit back, farm, and say, hey, Cerberus, you can take the next trick. That's fine by us.
It's fairly fine for BTS to be quiet, but I do think they need to, because of the way their comp works, they do need to be fairly assertive and pushing and trying to gain those control over those big objectives. That's why I want them to focus on the Drake. So if you give up that next Ocean Drake, it's not a huge deal. You're fine just scaling those extra 5 minutes coming back to the next one. But if you can secure that and keep it to yourself, generally that's a better option for you because it buys at 10 minutes or gets you a soul in the next 5. So I want them to try and push and be more assertive and try and do what their comp does best, and that is hold an area. But they just aren't. They're just conceding too much ground to the side of Cerberus right now. I think they feel like they're further behind than they actually are. So, like, if you're looking across at the items, you're seeing pretty much parity across the board, but there is a completed locket on the side of Ron OP. There is that extra last whisper on Artemis. So they might just be looking across and being, okay, we aren't quite as strong because our matchup gold is, I guess we have a completed item, a completed Sterix compared to components in Fook 1.
Potentially. One final thing that I do want to raise is these kind of games are my favorite. I'm a big fan of the likes of Azir Corki meta because you've got a whole period of build-up where there's not much happening, both teams are just posturing, and then you'll get that one big explosive fight that makes that entire stalemate worth it. And I feel like that's what we're building towards. So I want to know from you, Marby, who is the key member when we do get that fight to be looking out for Cerberus, for Sky? It could be who's dealing the most damage, who's creating the fight. What should the viewers be looking out for? What should I be looking out for?
I think Ryuk has to be the very obvious one, because Burst the Sky's team fight, I'm pretty much almost lives and dies by their performance. If they can't get any CC down as a Meganar, if they spend the entire fight in the mini form, it's gone, it's useless. But on the other side, I don't know, I guess you have to look at Artemis, but Poss, I think, would also be the big one to look at. How much damage can they do to the backline? Can they make things happen? But, I mean, to quickly answer my own question, yes, they can make things happen. It's called a two-man Baron, and there is Sky just were not aware of it until far too late.
Elio slowly making his way up, drops a ward, but the Baron already down to 2,000 health, and Cerberus played it well. They just put members in the side lane, and they said, BTS won't expect this one to come through. And Burst the Sky didn't. Now there is a Baron on the side of Cerberus. That means that they're going to be able to push in waves and maybe give them the opportunity to pick up another Drake for free, and a Drake that would take them to Soul Point as well.
Yeah, and if they can play off two lanes very well, that'll be really fantastic. They could look for a third one. They do technically have two effective split push side laners, but I want to just see Jane sort of lurk between the mid and the side of Poss, sort of just shadow, make them think, oh, we can collapse onto the Gwen perhaps, and then surprise Akali. Because, I mean, Cerberus in theory do not actually have a very good siege composition, so they really need to try and line up these waves. But they do have dive.
Cerberus take the fight. They're looking for Elio, and Artemis will get the kill. Artemis is excited. Down goes the inner tower. Now they look to Ryuk. They'll be able to pop the Sterix, but that is all. Burst Sky turtling under their tower. But look at Artemis go, and Ryuk is lucky to still be alive. Cerberus didn't even really need the Baron buff for that, but they're going to continue their siege nonetheless. Ryuk in base for a few seconds longer. Ocean Drake up, and Fook 1 already making his way down into the river.
Fook 1's going to be able to pick up that dragon easily, and this tower should not be long for this world. They're going to crack the inhibitor as well, and we just saw Ryuk. Once I said it lives and dies by him, and that fight was pretty much won by the time he transformed. It was a very good moves from Cerberus, knowing when to play into this Nah, into its rage bar, and it's just complete victory, total victory for Cerberus. Once again, we see here I think Ryuk's just exhausted himself as we see Cerberus try and make something happen. As the replay started a little bit too late, too early. But yeah, locks down this front line and drags them in. And you just need that one reset for Artemis to truly pop off. And Pots in the back line as well just shreds through Drakthar. It's the front line's gone. Alamina and Glory just cannot respond to it.
And I feel like this is another almost clash of champion identities within Burst Sky's composition. We talk about how Burst Sky, they want Cerberus to come into them. But if Cerberus are deciding when they want to take the fight, that means that they get to decide how much of Ryuk's Rage Bar he's got completed. If Burst Sky are the ones trying to engage, they can set things up at the right time, but then that doesn't really fit in with what the Aphelios and Brum want to do in a composition.
Yeah, I find it's a... hold on, we might have a pick on the Fuku one.
They do. The gravity well dropped down, but Rono-P and Artemis are making their way over. Solar Flare will lock Ryuk in place. The Glacial Fissure dropped down. Now Drakthar joining into the fray as well. Ryuk is super low. Super Mega Death Rocket gets the kill. And Poss is coming in from behind. What can Alamine do? He drops down the Moonlight Vigil, but it does nothing. It's a clean ace for Cerberus. They make their way past the top lane in a tower. They don't care about it. A quadra kill for Artemis. And all 5 members of Cerberus crash on into the Nexus Towers of Burst the Sky. It wasn't close at the end. Cerberus take a commanding win over Burst the Sky.
Yeah, we saw Sky get this. We saw Sky's composition sort of fall apart around that second Rift Herald, where they couldn't find that team fight they wanted, and because that lead and that pressure transitioned over to Cerberus, Cerberus was able to just run with it, able to control it, and Burst the Sky did not have the tools to fight to force it back into their own hands.
And I think that's, one of the big things about that. The fact that Cerberus, they played it slow. Yes, Burst the Sky were able to keep it even, but Cerberus were just biding their time. And then they said, okay, we're ready. And from that point, it was a one-sided game.
Yeah, and just from there, they played around the Narbar beautifully, and that was pretty much the only option Burst the Sky had less outside of some insane play from the Braum that you don't really expect out of them. Yeah, it just all fell apart. They didn't have the map control, and that was pretty much crucial considering the lack of direct engage that Burst Sky had.
Well, Burst Sky were not able to play around the Gnar. They weren't able to play around the Gnar Rage Bar, but we've got an analyst desk, and we do know how to play around our analyst desk. So what we're going to do, we're going to throw to a break, allow them to stack up their Rage Bar, and then once the break ends, they will be ready to break down that opening game for you guys. I'm proud.
And we have stacked up... Oh, unfortunate echo. Someone has unmuted themselves and got an echo. I had such a nice speech planned, but now we have to wait for the next post game, which is gonna come sooner or later, because Cerberus and Burst the Sky are at least playing one more game here. This one was a little bit of a weird affair. It felt very slow to me in the mid game, then suddenly one teamfight just decided everything. Cerberus to me looked like the more well-coordinated team, especially in the mid and late game, which is surprising because this is a new team. So I'll ask you first, Thana, from the outside of the VCS perspective, maybe what did you think about this game, and do you think there's any way for Burst the Sky to come back after what you've just seen from both of these teams?
Yeah, I think they did a really great job in the early game, splitting the map, stealing some of those red buffs because they knew that Pack 1 is a weaker jungler, but then they kind of messed up to punish the bot lane. And in the end, because Artemis never really got punished, he could kind of carry the team. But this whole map splitting just got them 2 Drakes, and that's it. And kind of was underwhelming, and then we had like 10 minutes of farming and then a sneaky Baron, and then the game was over. So just not so much of proactivity, not so much of like seeing that they can punish something and trying to get something with the map split, and just a little bit slow played from them.
And that's kind of weird to hear about Burst the Sky, maybe the most aggressive early game team, right, Rebel?
I mean, there's definitely times Drakthar has obviously shown that. Heck, in this game, they had some of the early plays that were set up. That bottom lane play got botched so ridiculously hard by Amina and Elio. Watching it happen live, it was like, okay, like it looks like Drakthar is really deep, but the fact that they had the ability to push in the lane like that, the support, only to take 2 tower shots, just ruined everything. And it felt like that pretty much throughout the game. It was like there's a lot of times where Drakthar had interactions with people and things didn't go their way. They didn't draft particularly strong lanes to help him out. And then all of a sudden they decide to collapse on these like one big moments. The Rift Herald that had happened, the Baron sneak, little tiny moments that like come out of nowhere for the side of Cerberus that just spike them. Like it was like 1k gold, then it was 2k gold, and then out of somewhere it's 5k gold, and then the game's over. There weren't these big fights that were deciding it. We weren't throwing away a bunch of kills. This was one of the more methodical games actually played out from both of these squads. It was just that I suppose that from the beginning of the game, it felt very heavily like that wasn't the strategy intending to be employed by Sky.
Yeah, this has never been the strongest point for Sky, right? I want to shift our attention to one player in particular that got the most MVP points from all of us. All of us combined, not saying all of us had the same vote, but it's Pos, the top laner for Cerberus, and this player is quite a curious case because he came in as the first ever Korean import and then didn't really see any starting time. He leveled up the level of the other top laner though, Pun. We all know the story. Pun went on to become a champion. Now he's benched. Now Pos is finally putting in some very good work. So Thana, walk me through Pos's success story in this game and potentially also the redemption arc for Gwen as a champion.
Yeah, I think they tried to play around him in the early game. At least there came some games, but never really with success. Then he had one little moment where he could almost solo kill, but then like nothing happened. But he was just consistent. It was just always pressure top lane, then the Baron sneak, just because they had Gwen, I could do that. And just in all those team fights, he just try to walk through the Aphelios and just try to kill him. So it was just pretty solid, not really a single misplay from him, and just really insanely played in such a matchup where you could argue that range versus mid is sometimes hard, but he did a great job.
And with that, we're into draft already of Game 2. Cerberus very likely is going to play the same 5 members again. I don't see any change. So let's get into this one. And Rebel, maybe to start off the draft, what do you think Burst the Sky should do differently in the draft in particular to attack Cerberus a little bit more in Game 2?
That's a pretty good start. First off, taking Thresh off the board yet again, this time on blue side, making sure that there's no like R1, R2 ADC into Thresh combination that could come about, because it's a good way to try to set up Artemis. I also really like that they take the Gwen away. It feels like the meta is less defined by things that can kind of sandbag the lane, which is why Pun is no longer in the lineup. Because, I mean, you think about Pun V9, you talk about the Pundo, you talk about like Tom Kench and all the champions that you could make memes with about how Pun did. And that was what he really made the name on. But you think about champions like Graves and Gwen that have really defined the meta, that are also these like lane stabilizing picks, but they have a lot more carry and damage potential. They're not really Pun's style, which is probably why Pos kind of stepped in the first place. So I like that immediately we see not only the Graves get taken potentially for Ryuk, but the flex potentially to Drakthar always entices me for very specific reasons that I've talked about on previous broadcasts, but also as a way potentially of just kind of pinching off that top lane by giving themselves the option of being able to themselves sandbag the way that Pun might have.
Following those initial expectations, we see Cerberus answer with Viego in the jungle, a jungler that can be very hit or miss, so I'm not entirely sure if that's really the jungler to put your rookie jungler stepping into Ego's shoes on. I liked him on Xin, just an easy to execute champion with a very clear game plan. So Viego now coming in, and we have the classic Gum response.
Yeah, like it kind of reminds me of her first series, like this like Viego and Jinx both want those resets, and then on the flip side, like Gum in the first series, like pick up the Renekton Jhin for those early game plays, and now it kind of reminds me of this first series. Anyway, I really like Jhin together with those other early game champions, because if they get rolling, then you can always with this utility ADC just try to engage, because Renekton and Graves don't really have engage on their own, so they need some slows, and so it's really fitting into this team comp. And so we kind of get to Na now on Pos's hand, so let's see what he can do with the Rage Bar, if he can land those crucial Na ultimates there. And of course, Artemnis Jinx, like we saw it in so many games right now, and he always carries with it, so I'm pretty hyped for this pickup as well.
I find it pretty funny that our guest is talking positively about Jhin here on this stream. He doesn't know. He lacks crucial information. I think, Rebel, what do you think about Syndra in this composition for Burst of Sky? Wouldn't it round out the perfect composition for us?
No. That would be like the Exodia of things that our analysts say. It's like Graves, Renekton in this draft. A lot of analysts hate Renekton. You talk about the Jhin, a Syndra would round this out, and then an Alistar, I think, would really round out the entire composition from that point. Yeah. This is actually also perhaps the one team in the entire world, because right now there's about 300 Graves of Graves that have occurred over the entire split, and only about 30 of them are jungle Graves. This is the one team that I would expect to continue running this. I've talked about this before. Drakthar used to be the pinch hitter for the Graves when he was playing with Eagle, because Eagle couldn't somehow pilot the champion, and so they needed somebody to do it. And that's why Drakthar even got a chance to start in the league in the first place. So here, I mean, they get Ryuk as comfort champion, which is kind of nice, and I still don't like Jhin necessarily. But the combination of the Renekton and the Graves is one that I think is like bread and butter for like maximal Sky output. Like if you think about champions that define Sky, these are definitely two of those champions.
Yep, but like it could be maybe even the Graves mid lane. I mean, it's a flex pick still, so maybe we get surprised, but I don't see Glory picking him up. No. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that we have this Graves jungle pick up for sure. And I like the Nautilus in this team comp, because like analyzed in the first series, with those two reset champions, you really need someone who locks people up to kill them, to burst them down. And Nautilus is exactly like hooking someone, ulting someone, and then hopefully getting the resets in. So he kind of fits really well, and he is a reliable engage. If we just look at Na, sometimes he can engage, sometimes not, but with Nautilus hooks you can always engage if you want.
It's the Elio Leona. What do you think about Elio Leona?
Head empty, no thoughts. That's the best I can do here. I'm just hoping that, like, I don't know what Glory has to round this out with to actually make sense. Something Yeah, okay. This is nice. Glory on the Silas is something we always like to see because it's one of the better champions. Something was ringing an Orianna bell in my head that was like, okay, I feel like they're gonna do it, but I'm kind of happy that it's actually the Silas. Although it is a blind Silas, so Jane gets an opportunity to counterpick here. Oh, there's the Orianna.
The Orianna Bell was ranked. She was just hurt a little bit later, maybe in the other gaming house. So we have the Orianna here. Thana, talk me. I'm not sure which position you play mostly, but top. Oh yeah, right, top lane. You told us about top lane. But are you familiar with this matchup? How can you tell us a little bit about Orianna against Salis?
Yeah, I think it's some bullying in the early game because range versus melee. Like Orianna can really win the early stages, but I think that she can get overwhelmed by the sheer damage of Silas, and especially if he gets the stun with a gank from Traktar, then Orianna will pop. So I think it's a good matchup to kind of be stable in the lane, but of course you give him a really great ultimate to steal. So that's always a don't taker, but. Anyway, I think it's a good matchup just to farm and just to bully, just to get some CS lead in the lane, and then hopefully get some few thousand Elo shockwaves done to carry the game.
And we are at this stage already. Again, game 2 is upon us. Incipient, we are almost there. So please give me your predictions, starting with Rebel. I am liking what I'm seeing on my screen right now. So Rebel, who's gonna take it away?
I think if Drakthar is able to play the way that BTS was able to find kind of success in previous seasons, which is play into Glory, make sure that the range versus melee matchup isn't terrible, break the Silas out, and start attacking into side lanes, which look really good. The early game could look a lot better for the side of Burst the Sky. I can't get over the fact that you still have Artemis on Jinx, you still have a great team fighting setup, and Poss's play has just been so good. It's impossible for me to bid against Cerberus, but I do think this game is a lot closer, and I'm hoping we get some exciting team fights.
Thana, just one word, do you agree or not?
Artemis Jinx, so Cerberus.
Okay, two Cerberus predictions again. They were both right last time, and maybe for the final time today, if our analysts are correct, we are going to hand it over to the casters, Milky and Marby, for you.
Thank you very much, Yulway. I'll be honest with you, Marby. I don't think there's any chance that our analysts here at the VCS could be right twice in a row. And I also forgot, actually, at the start of the last game, to tell you a funny story. Would you like to hear it?
Sure, it doesn't appear to be too much happening in this early game, so...
So, there was this analyst. He goes by the name of Fresh Stanner. You might have heard of him. And he wanted to do some analyst work on the VCS. So I said, you know what? I'll give you my notes. I'll give you a cheat sheet. But what I didn't tell him was I put down the wrong names on my notes. And then he did an analytical point. I always get that wrong. He did an analytical point about Cerberus, and he called their support Taki. And yeah, it was all my fault. So that's my way of apologizing to you, Dana.
Okay.
It was all on me. It was quite funny when it happened, though.
Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely sticking up for the guests. Good on you. I will not stick up, however, for this Gnar pick. I do not like it. I think I see a Graves, I see a Renekton. I think there is a lot of flex potential. I should pick Jace. This is what I really would have. This is what I would have liked to see out of Pause. Try and actually bully the lane. You get to build a hull breaker very early on if you decide to go that route and actually control this lane extremely well. Instead, they go to Gnar, and I have huge gripes with Gnar, just in general. I mentioned them last game, and it's also opened up Sky, Glory in particular, to pick this set. Set. Silas, the other one that Everyday plays, picks up Silas, and now you have this insane ultimate that you can kind of just use. You don't have to worry about a rage bar or anything. It's insane. What I'm basically saying is, Puss better get the solo kill, or he's just wasted everybody's time.
Otherwise, Pun's coming back into the team. Ryuk's gonna flash in, picks up the kill. The curses are back. Let's go, Marby.
Don't pick Gnar. Like, yeah, that was
It's the matchup all along. It was the matchup all along.
it's the matchup all along. I don't. Anyway, moving all the way from this top side, do we have to watch again? Posh
Yes,
just
we
walks
do.
too far forward after losing his rage. He doesn't have anything in the tank. Ryuk just kills him. It's fantastic. It's great start for Sky. This is what they want because mid lane's going to be a bit of a pressure vacuum for a while, thanks to the range matchup and the safety of Orianna. So Cerberus going to try and clap back.
Crocodile versus man with Zweihander and man with Boomerang. Zweihander wins.
Boomerang. Yeah, and it's a
Did
nice.
you call him a rat?
Yeah, the rat with the boomerang.
How dare you?
Yeah,
I will have you know,
not
Na
a
is my
man, that's
favorite
for
champion. Na is my favorite champion in the game. If a Na was a real creature, Na would be above red pandas on the animal tier list.
Nara is like not even top 3 of the Yordles.
We need to have some words after this, Marby.
Anyway,
yeah.
Drakthar is going to have words with the Cerberus bot lane if he has anything to say about it. But I'm
let's
holding
see.
the wave.
Actually, I think this is the first time we've got a Graves jungle as opposed to a Graves solo lane. I'm gonna quickly
this split,
check up
yes.
this stack.
Fairly sure that is the case for this split. So, it's actually, but you might want to carry up because Ron OP is engaged onto Elio. It's fizzled out. Nothing happened. You looked away and action happened. It's all right. No, it's all good. It's all good.
I was watching, but you were doing a fantastic job of covering for me that, I'll just let you continue.
Okay. Well, as is, gonna crash this wave into the bot side and get a early reset for Artemis. He could possibly get away with going just for a trying to get a sneaky gold purchase in and just trying to go in and get that extra scaling going, but the lurk is they are lurking about, which indicates to me they're gonna try and make a break for some turret plates. It's a game of chicken in the bot lane. No, they're not sure whether to recall or not. Finally, a recall comes through.
Actually, is that like a paradox that if you win the game of chicken, that means you actually lost? Because now you're a chicken?
No, you lose the game of chicken by blinking first, basically. So
Okay.
Completing the recall means that Aomine has lost the game of chicken. He does not know the ways of SBTC, who, as we all know, are the super big time chickens. Anyway, that all aside, gonna be a reset quickly, unless they can interrupt.
Oh! That was a blind E as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was blind. Not too many options it could have been, but narrowly avoided by Artemis. Could have been a disaster. Now they're gonna just have to back off and try and reset. These waves are just crashing back and forth. And not really any advantages being built up anywhere except this top lane, where Ryuk has picked himself up a small CS lead. It's kind of being matched in the mid lane thanks to this in the Orianna matchup, but overall very even across the board, and we're just waiting for the big something to open the play up. And Jane's gonna make the move out of mid lane first. Can they find Elio or Drakthar lurking in the jungle? Not likely. But if they control the spot side river, they can pick up the first dragon, get the Drake stacking in their favor. Probably want to... Yeah.
I was going to
Wanna
say,
collapse on that
especially
suit.
with Drakthar on the top side of the map, nice little window that they could try to abuse.
Yeah, not quite sure where he is though, so they're not going to take that risk and start it up. They might have kind of missed their window to really commit to it, because if they start to if they make it clear that they're going that way with the Jinx, that gives the opportunity for Ryuk to rotate down and help Drakthar just clean up this Rift Herald, which is probably slightly more impactful overall. And so we are starting to see Cerberus rotate at least Fuquan into the top side to just make sure he's aware of where Drakthar is. Can they control this Rift Herald pit? Not likely. Bit of a scuffle goes on.
scuffles are continuing, and it's kind of more of what we saw in Game 1. Maybe a little bit less aggression in the early stages of the game than what we saw in the opening game between the two teams. And especially for me, anyway, when I look over to the Cerberus composition, I think they're quite happy with having this time just to scale. You know, let Artemis get some items. Same for Jane. Same for Fook 1 as well. I think they're all happy with just having some extra time.
They're all fairly happy to just let the game play out. You are, but by a similar token, you're not too worried about giving up that much and letting the game sort of progress slowly on the side of Sky. At least for the next few minutes, where you're trying to let Glory get some levels. But here we go.
Depth charge hijack, drop down onto Ron OP as in goes Ryuk. He's got the Dominus. The shockwave will land onto two members, but now by Sky, they turn their attention towards Artemis and Jane before backing away. Just the one kill going to the hands of Burst the Sky. And while they weren't able to pick up a Rift Herald, I guess it's a 1-for-1 in that regard. A kill for an objective.
Yeah, they should be able to clean up this dragon on the way back too. So, in the end, it's not too bad for Sky overall. It depends how much investment Cerberus can get out of this Rift Herald. Can they crack open a first brick with it? Can they push it into a second tower? That sort of thing. Jinx Rocket goes for it. Doesn't happen. Worth the try.
You gotta shoot your shot.
Yeah. But overall, yeah, just only getting that one is a bit of a shame for Burst the Sky, and it only goes onto this Renekton, who is about to pay for it.
They drop down the dive, Heartbreaker as well. Ryuk will heal up, but Fook will be able to get the kill. The tower shot at the end pulls one back.
Yeah, so that didn't go great. Lot of should have flashed. But now Fook 1 has decided he's a 2-0 Viego. He's going to be the carry, and he's going to donate himself a lovely full tower first blood. More about 3.5 plates, as he shared at least one. Bot lane?
Bot lane, there is action occurring. However, the Flame Trumpets will stop Drakthar from advancing. Now, that was a lot of gold that went into the hands of Fook 1, so I'm going to try something here, Marby. And it might work, it might not work. But if the observers could highlight the gold, I'd like to see exactly how far ahead Fook 1 is. Okay, it didn't work. Shockwave being dropped down. Jane very low. Drakthar looking for the play. Zenith's play not quite going to land. But now Sky turn things around. They get the kill onto Drakthar. They get the kill on to Pass as well. And Burst the Sky find themselves picking up find themselves picking up a 1-for-1.
Yeah, it's a nice collapse. Poss is able to return and make sure that a play that otherwise should have been fairly one-sided for Burst the Sky sort of trades back, but he does end up giving his own life in the process, so that gives Ryuk a little bit of time to just free farm on the top side to continue with this CS lead and crash a wave up top. Poss, luckily for him this time, does have the teleport, so can just clean that up nicely, but it's not looking great for this Nas so far. As here we see the shockwave had already been blown from Glory, and Jane collects Drakthar very nicely in there. Elio is here. It doesn't really do. It helps lock down the kill onto Poss for Glory, so it's good to see him making these roams, and he's not actually just hard. He's cleaned up his play from last blue, where it's just I see person throw E, get killed, wander off by myself, get killed. He's playing a lot more reserved, which is good to see from Elio on this Leona specifically.
Honestly, that sounds a bit like the Milky Syndrome. Was a Leona main last split and for splits before that, and honestly, that's just what I do. It's very hard as a Leona not to follow in, just like the Lee Sin Syndrome. Is it Lee Sin Syndrome or is it Lee Syndrome?
It's Lee Syndrome.
Lee Syndrome. Well, Artemis Syndrome right now, and that is called, your name is Artemis, you get focus. However, nobody dies. We'll see whether Drakthar keeps on aggressing. And I think it's just going to be the trade of health bars as Super Mega Death Rocket does some extra work onto Drakthar and Elliot's health bars.
That rocket should be enough to... Okay, no, it's not actually going to be enough to dissuade the push coming through from Sky. And unfortunately for Poss, who is getting a lot of free time alone on this top side, it's not like he has a tower to take. Fook already stole that entirely for himself, so should clean up the CS difference a little bit. That's a small win for the side of Sky, but with those plates coming down, that's... Sorry, small win for Cerberus, but plates coming down means overall Sky comes out fairly happy, though it is a not much return for the double TP investment. But it is only
Cerberus.
It is only 13 minutes, so those TPs aren't worth anything anyway.
Well, when do TPs get evolved? Is it 14 minutes or 16?
14.
Okay. So they will be worth something in a bit. In a bit being 20 seconds time. Now, Cerberus have a 2k gold lead, and I think pretty much all of that is actually going to be on Fook 1, who can do a lot on this Viego, but he probably does need to... Oh, they did it! They did it!
There it is.
Quick, Marby, talk about goal gaps.
Yeah, biggest goal gap is obviously in the jungle, about 1700, so at least pretty much most of, if not all of it. The rest of it is centered on this mid lane. It's coming up. It's gone very well for the side of. Gives a very good pressure point for Cerberus to work through, and if they can set up these big set up these resets, it can pop off and grow even larger. You really want this to really pop off for Fook 1, and they're gonna keep this pressure on and push straight into this jungle. Drakthar, not really doing much. He's on a grave. He's farming his jungle, but he's not even really doing that quite as effectively as he could be. He's made his way towards this top side, but Cerberus moving as a unit. He can't even look to start up this Rift Herald. It's just too much.
It does mean that Cerberus have been able to get the Drake pushing mid-wave. They had a little think about turning their attention towards the Rift Herald, but in the end decide against it. A bit too late to stop Ron OP's back.
Yeah, they had an inkling, but couldn't get anything done. But now this Rift Herald might be a bit of a source of contention. Does Cerberus want to really go for it? They're not in position, and if they spot out Fook 1, he's gonna have to bail. It's a bit of a win for Sky. They can try and convert this into something later, but now Ron OP is back on the map, and he's looking very aggressive with this ward clearing.
He's a man on a mission, and no one will get in the way of him clearing out ward. Cerberus, considering the dive into the mid lane tower, it would be a 4v3. Solar Flare drop down into the curtain call. The focus onto Ron OP, but the shots from Jin not really doing any damage. In fact, it looks like, to be honest, Cerberus weren't even in a fight of any sorts.
Nope, and Poss has decided that he doesn't even care about these team fights, really. He's picked up the Hull Breaker. So I'll hold that thought.
Honestly, they're trying to throw everything onto Ron OP, but he's still alive. Down to 100 health and has a little shield on top of that. But that was a hijack from Glory. That was a Graves ultimate as well. They didn't drop down the Ignite. The Ignite might have actually got the kill onto Ron OP there.
They haven't used the ultimate from the Nautilus yet, ultimate on the side of Glory just yet. So they have so they still have great strong threat as we see it go onto the Orianna, and it does net them this mid lane tower, and this should provide Burst the Sky the opportunity to actually look for that control and these deep vision and this warding that just eluded them all of last game.
Well, Cerberus turn their attention towards the mid lane once again. Burst Sky have been able to crack open the outer tower, and now they look for the engage. Shockwave will land onto 2. Depth charge as well. Elio falls. Glory teleporting in, looking towards Fook 1. Ryuk might come in as well. He's got the Dominus available. Who does he look for? In fact, he's just going to be zoned out of this fight. It's 1-0. Cerberus get the kill. Cerberus get the tower.
It blows. It's only the one kill, but it blows a lot of the summoner spells on the side of Burst the Sky's carries, so they should have very strong control as they move their way into this blue buff. They want to just make Burst the Sky fight for as much as they can. It's actually going to just be a reset coming out from here. And where do we all see a start? It's a nice group up, and they find a pick onto Elio. Decent shockwave combined with the depth charge almost should have resulted in a kill onto Drakthar, but it removes him completely from the fight. It means there's no real contest onto this tower, and a few flashes are burnt after the fact because they tried to defend a tower they had no right looking towards.
I'm feeling very scared for Burst of Sky, and I think Burst of Sky fans should be feeling scared as well, because right now their team, or Burst of Sky, are in a situation where they should be strong. This is where the BTS champions hit their kind of mid-game spikes now in the next 5 minutes. And if they don't get anything off in that period, it's literally just a road downhill for them from then on.
Yeah, they do need to try and pick up this big front-to-back team fight, but it's becoming very hard for them to try and actually make anything come from it. I guess your best you could just say, we need to just move into these side lanes and try and split this pressure off. There's decent wave clear from the side of these 280 carries in the jungle and bot lane. It's currently sitting in the mid, and Glory should be pretty comfortable in the side lane on the Sylas. So should Ryuk. They have to worry a little bit because they don't have outer towers to fall back to and might have to overextend a little bit, but if they can crack these outer towers as well, that should be the goal that is kind of needed for Sky to feel comfortable fighting in this next dragon. But as is.
Quick question before the fight breaks out. Burst of Sky, who are they looking to focus on this Cerberus composition?
You need to delete. Fu One. You cannot let that man get a reset, but by the same token, you kind of leave Artemis open for them.
Well, the fight has started. Where is Fuka 1? Depth Touch is going to be able to find the knockup, but instead it's a front-to-back team fight. They're going to be able to get the kill onto Ron OP. Burst of Sky, they win the fight. Now they can turn their attention towards the Drake for both teams so far. One Drake in the kitty bank, and this will be doubling up Sky's total.
Anyone to know how you avoid Silas getting huge Gnar ults? You just send the Gnar into the side lane with a hull breaker. He picks up a top lane turret. He gets half the health off this inhibitor as well. You lose the fight in the mid, and you kind of don't really want that to happen. You don't want to give too much over to Burst the Sky, but you are still getting gold on the map. So Burst the Sky are gonna try and double down, I think, around the Baron? No, it does not seem so.
For now, for Burst Sky, get vision around Baron. I've been talking about how they are this mid-game team. They need to get leads, and maybe now this is their kind of last opportunity to do so. So they're trying to find fights. But Cerberus, again, sure, they lose a Drake. They don't care. It's not an Infernal Soul for a long time. Sure, it's a little blemish on their record, but they can hold out. They can say, you know what, take the next Drake. We'll fight you in 10 minutes at a time. And Burst Sky need to find some way of really punishing Cerberus. And I know I keep bringing this up, but I really want to hammer it home, because this is an Orianna on 2 items. It's a Jinx on 2 items. Once that Rabadon gets completed for Jane, they're going to do so much work.
Yeah, you're stuck in a situation as Sky where you kind of want to fight in the corridors, so Glory and Rhea can do a hell of a lot of damage. But if you're in a corridor, that really opens up the shockwave potential, as well as Artemis raining these rockets down. So it's kind of catch-22, where your best options also feed into Cerberus, and that's kind of the problem that's kind of Silas, isn't it? Because you're stealing Cerberus's big tools. And we're actually seeing Cerberus. They are the ones setting up early around this Baron, but they aren't finding these traps. These traps are still around, giving a little bit of information to Burst the Sky, so they don't feel too pressured. But I think this top lane matchup that is now scuffling on the bot side, it's going fairly one-sided towards POS now. And it's thanks to this hull breaker item. You cannot fight this man 1v1.
So he needs to wait for someone else to come, then he can fight with 1v2. Then he can get the kills, then he can get the outplays. The inner tower falling, and we're in this weird situation where Burst Sky won the most recent fight. Burst Sky picked up the most recent objective, but it's Cerberus who have a tempo, who have control, who have vision on the map, and are stopping BTS from making any real plays.
Sky, because they don't have these sideline towers, they are so scared of trying to force where they do have vision. They invest a bunch of their vision up towards this top side, around the Baron pit, in towards this jungle, and they don't even try to send Glory up to just wail on that top lane outer and at least get some gold back into their pockets, try and push the advantage Glory can get for himself, try and make that Silas into a monster threat. Just see here, Boss, he's chunked out another inhibitor turret to half. He's fine. He's loving it.
Honestly, Poss just there was like Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globe Awards. He just doesn't care that Ryuk is there. He's just insulting him to his face and saying, "What are you gonna do about it, son?" And Ryuk says, "I'm gonna wait for your minion wave to die, and then I'll do nothing. Maybe wait for Glory to show up, then he can look for some plays." But again, Cerberus, they're just waiting. They know there's a Drake in 1 minute 30. They'll see if they can take that. If they can't, sure, they'll wait out a bit longer. Because Orianna is getting stronger. So is Artemis. Getting towards that third item. What would you actually like to see Artemis picking up for his third item? Do you want to see Infinity Edge or more towards a Runan's Hurricane?
Artemis, he's picking up that Mortal Reminder
LDR.
right now. No, not Mortal Reminder, yeah, LDR. The other one. Mortal Reminder used to do armor, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's picking that up, and I think that's fairly important to do. You're into the Sonyas, into Elio, into Ryuk's health stacking. It's just gonna help out a little bit more across pretty much across the board. It's only it's not doing too much. And I think this is fine. Artemis, Cerberus as a whole aren't too mad about hitting these front to back team fights with this setup, but here's the opening up.
Curtain call. Drop down. Can you see any difference to Ron OP's health bar?
No, not really. It does give Sky position, but because of the Cerberus have been keeping a pretty healthy gap between Glory and any of the prime picks. Glory now has to step charge again.
Look how many control wards there are in that brush. 4.
They know what's going on in this brush.
Look at Ryuk.
And Gloria's just not being able to pick the really impactful ones. He hasn't grabbed a shockwave since that play in the mid lane. And Ryuk is in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it's buying time for the rest of his team to be able to pick up the Drake. He takes Artemis super low. Now, Artemis will be out of this upcoming fight. Yes, there's a Mega Death Rocket available, but that is all. BTS decide against taking the fight. And they are able to get the Drake. That is critical because now the next Drake is Soul Point. And that could be absolutely huge. The focus being dropped down instantly onto Ron OP. Teleport coming through. This will be a 3v4. Mega Death Rocket only eats up the health bar of Drakthar and does practically no damage either. But Fook 1 is playing aggressive. Flashing forward. Goes in with a Heartbreaker. Looking for Glory. Now they turn their attention towards Aomine and they're going to be able to get the kill. Now they look for Elio. Deadly Flourish locks him down under tower and Cerberus will pick up 3 kills in total. Yes, they lose Ron OP. Yes, they lose a Drake, but they will be able to get the Baron.
Yeah, instant turn onto the Baron. There's not really much that Burst the Sky can do. They have a teleport onto Glory, and I think they're looking for it. Ryuk's up as well, actually, so they're looking for the collapse. It does force them off. They are not willing to take it. There is an opportunity for a huge Gnar. There was an opportunity for a huge Gnar coming up from the side of Glory if they clumped up that way. So Cerberus just going to sort of take the extra fight, take the kills, but it is, as mentioned, Soul Point. And Ryuk here did do a lot. He almost killed off Artemis. He stalled out enough time for this Baron to go down. This Dragon, rather. And from here, they blow everything onto the Nautilus, and the Nautilus is kind of not all that important. The Gnar, however, able to pick up Aomine. That's exactly what they needed to try and blow this open. It worked out very well.
Things are looking good for Cerberus, but I feel like this fight, this game, is going to come down to that final Drake. If Burst the Sky can pick up that Infernal Soul, it could be absolutely huge for them. It could find that little extra bit of damage that they've been seemingly lacking in these fights to burst through the first target that they find. because while they do need to get onto Fukuana and onto Artemis, they've seemingly been unable to do so. They've been trying to front to back, they've been trying to kill the first target they come across. Posture side laning, he picks up that inhibitor tower, and now there is an avenue for Cerberus to even look for a backdoor if the opportunity arises.
And we've stunned, and we're still just seeing this pressure from Cerberus coming down through POS, cracking this inhibitor, as the rest of Cerberus are just like, we just need to stay close to this Baron, keep the threat alive, because, yeah, as long as nothing happens in the 4v4, Cerberus is pretty much happy to keep winning, and now that they've actually broken open this inhibitor, I think they could very comfortably move POS just into the top lane and do the same thing, try and crack open both side lanes. But no, now Elio is being forced back to try and respond to POS's just relentless push. And now maybe the opportunity opens for Cerberus to look in towards this Baron. No teleport up for POS, so he is isolated down there. But it's not like anyone matching him on the side of Sky has one either, so...
I want to throw in a quick point about Cerberus and POS and Jane, because Jane coming in, rookie split. What do you make of them? Where would you list them if you had to, off the top of your head? Where would they rank amongst all the mid laners?
Ooh, so we've had this fairly noticeable drop between our top 4 mid laners and the rest. So I think he's actually fitting in quite comfortably, sort of below what we would have called our top 4. We can't really talk too much about Yado. He's played one series and he looked absolutely dreadful. So
yeah.
Coming in as
we can't talk about Carty either because he just ran it down on the Carly in the previous series.
Yeah. So I think he's coming in at a pretty comfortable around 3rd, 4th right now. I know still need to see more from Noga to really solidify where he sits. Yeah, there's a lot, and Artifact's making a rise, so it's actually fairly hard to say.
Well, things are looking close in the VCS. Things are looking close between Burst Sky and Cerberus, both with 1 win, 1 loss. For Burst Sky, they need to win this game if they want to keep their series hopes alive. Cerberus, on the other hand, looking for their second 2-0 of the week. And to start pushing themselves back towards those playoff spots. They are the current VCS champions. And this Infernal Soul, can they stop Burst Sky from securing it? Keep a look at Drakthar. He's going to be wanting to steal this one away with everything he's got. POS already going in, and the focus is on to Elio, who's already out of this fight. Now they look to Renekton. They take down the Renekton. Who's going to get onto the back line now? Glory just sitting in the Drake there, and he is forced away. Burst Sky give up any hopes of stealing away the Drake. And as a result, they are still that one critical Drake away from Soul Point, but Cerberus, they extend the game for even longer. They continue to scale and they continue to look for objectives. This time, the Baron up once again.
They are able to find the pick onto Elio and convert it into another to Ryuk. It sets them up to control the fight. It forces Drakthar away to respond in part to the super minions pouring into the bot side. That's where Sky had to go after this fight. And so it's a free Baron, completely uncontested, and they can use this, they can control these waves and set up siege on these remaining 2 lanes. As we just see, it's a good engage, and then all the focus, everyone turns immediately onto Ryuk. They do not want him going anywhere near the actual backline.
That was
They
a
blow him
5v4
up.
as well.
Great.
It was a 5v4 because Glory will start catching the wave in the bottom lane. And by the time he arrived, Cerberus said, okay, we don't need to fight anymore. We've already got 2 kills. What are you guys going to do?
Yeah, and now I've talked about POS so much this game, just being a menace. Now he has Baron. He's teleporting into the top lane. He's going to try and sit top, try and break open this inhibitor tower at the top lane as the rest of Cerberus try and siege up mid. It's not the best siege comp. You don't have too much you kind of have good zone control with the Orianna ball to try and control these sides, but here's the open up. Here's the collapse from Sky. It's not gonna do anything, it feels like.
POS is not here though. This is a 5v4, a narrow window for Burst Sky to take a fight, for Burst Sky to win a play, but POS getting ever closer Glory focused down with the depth charge, but Boss is here! He throws down the ult on to Elio, but what can Ryuk do in the back lane? Trying to heal up, but Artemis is still untouched. Artemis throwing out the rockets, and Artemis dealing the damage. Elio on practically no health, but down goes the Glory, and Cerberus will just run through the remaining members of Burst Sky. Dredgeline lands onto our Mine. Drakthar stuck in the pit. Drakthar will get one kill, but Drakthar will get no more. Elio trying to find a sneaky little back spot, but Poss will spot him out. In fact, I don't think Poss saw him until the very end. Hops over the blue buff, finds Elio, picks up the kill, secures the ace for Cerberus, and Cerberus crash on into the base of Burst Sky. Cerberus will take down the final Nexus Tower, but first they've got to go head on over to the inhibitor, take that one down, reopen up the Nexus Towers for themselves, and Cerberus will take the 2-0 over Burst Sky.
Fantastic lane pressure from the side of Cerberus, complete map control, it leading to smaller victories, opening up for them, and they lead, and it all culminates into a big team fight where they just smash Cerberus and can just walk it in through the destroyed inhibitor that the side lane pressure has got them. The Gnar, it started terribly, but once that Hull breaker just... It wasn't Gnar that won the game that did that pressure. It was Hullbreaker that got that pressure. And it paid off absolutely fantastically for the side of Cerberus.
I know our viewers couldn't see it, but we could see on the feed the atmosphere in the Cerberus camp, and it looks pretty good. We asked a question on our Good Morning Vietnam podcast as well about what we think of Cerberus. We had mixed feelings about it, but looking at Cerberus right now, they look decent. They look in good shape. Maybe not at the same level as when they had Ego, but I don't think this is a Cerberus team that won't be making playoffs.
Yeah, they might narrowly miss it because there are only the 4 spots, but I do think they are quite comfortable in that range and can easily get into it. I feel the bringing in the new top and mid has done wonders for, at the very least, the mental of the team. Granted, we haven't seen the other two players against anyone other than Garm, who are just look at them last series. It was insane. So we can't write those two off completely just yet, but this is currently working for Cerberus, and we'll see how it continues throughout the rest of the split.
Well, fantastic stuff from Cerberus. They take the 2-0. From myself and Marby, that is everything, but our analyst desk does still need to break down this game. So we're going to be throwing to them, and they'll be bringing the show to a close as well.
Well, thank you very much, Milky and Marby, of course, and I'm very proud of you, Milky, for not making fun of me, because I was very, very down on Cerberus, and now they completely proved me wrong. Yeah, a 2-0 weekend for Cerberus. Not only a 2-0, a 4-0 game score weekend with Jane and Poss coming in out of nowhere after Pan and Yado had an amazing split, were champions of the league in winter. Sky was great in winter. I don't think winter ever happened, Rebel. Do you think we were just all fever dreaming? What is going on? Where did the winter split performance go?
It's a great question, because it seems like almost out of absolutely nowhere, what was the strength of Sky and what got them kind of the win in the previous splits just disappeared, right? Like this mid game that was supposed to be like the crux of how they were able to beat Cerberus previously when it was their old composition, all of a sudden is gone. They're not doing anything. The game is like a third of a kill per minute. That's not even close to VCS standards. Somebody's going to have to worry about the stock prices, because they'll certainly be affected by the KDAs for these players. But it's a little ridiculous, just how slowly paced that these games were for the side of Sky. Because it feels like, when you're playing with the champions you did, and when you're playing with the players that you've got, you got to play a little faster than what they did today.
Yeah, and Cerberus, a new team. What is this new team about, Thana? You're not influenced by all the impressions from Winter Split. You haven't seen this team win the league with a very different lineup, so you are coming in fresh. Tell me, what is this team about after you've seen them play against what we thought was one of the better teams in Sky today, and pretty much, maybe not stomp them, but win very comfortably? What would you say are their strengths and maybe the weaknesses, if you saw any?
Yeah, I think they are just slow and methodical, so they just scale and let hopefully Artemis carry them in the late game. So just they don't need to hurry. They just play and scale and farm and try to play with pressure, like we saw today with the Hullbreaker now, for example. They just push out lanes and just picking scaling on all lanes, and then just hopefully when time has passed, they can win those team fights. And they even drop some trakes and stuff, and hopefully just get to the point where they can take over the game. And I think that's a playstyle which is pretty difficult, because if you can't execute that right, and if you just fall behind, then you are doomed. But they play it just really, really good and slow, and with not that much of mistakes. Maybe sometimes like for example this early first blood on the top lane where Na just gets soloed, but besides that, they are just really, really clean in their playstyle.
And that's something no one would ever expect someone to say about a VCS team. A clean, slow playstyle, trying to do scaling. What's happening? Too much Korean influence, Rebel? We have a Korean player now, playing very well in the top lane, playing split push to win in the VCS. They also have a lot of Korean coaches and backup stuff, so staff. So are we slowly becoming LCK 2.0 now?
Now, I think to judge Poss on the previous two games specifically is a little bit hasty, because we still have plenty of games to go throughout the split. Because so far, basically, what we've seen from them is the Team Flash win and then the Sky win. And one of those, of course, for Team Flash, it was Marcus, who is a very young player, very newer rookie, even if he is talented. And then you had Ryuk. And I mean, let's be real here. In the vast majority of games, as it is, after 15 minutes, you could call me Ricky Gervais, because I don't give a shit about Ryuk for the most part. And that's, I think, reasonable in the majority of his games, which is why, like, Poss, if he's playing these champions that are able to split push the way that they do, I think it's very easy for him to take over. I want to see what it looks like when he's playing somebody like Coded, who's willing to take counter matchups like a Jax into something like the Gwen, or somebody like Hosbed who's willing to take that. Somebody else that's willing to take something that will just directly beat him in a one-on-one, and then we can start talking about how Poss is taking over the top lane. Until then, right now, I think it's reasonable to say top 4. I think it's reasonable to call him one of the better top laners that's been around for this split so far. A little hasty, perhaps, to say the Korean takeover is coming to fruition so far.
That's very fair. We're going to have to wait and see. The matchup against Gum is now very far away. They got that out of the way very at the start. O2 looked disappointing, but now they have an opportunity to just win all the other matches and maybe clash with Gum later in the split for the big title of best team. Who knows? Maybe not. We're going to have to wait and see. 4-0 in the week is certainly a very good result for this new team. But let's turn our eyes to Sky and the disappointment that is their current performance. I want to first start with their picks, and I was very disappointed or very annoyed by their picks. But I mean, you know me. I hate Grace and Jhin, especially Grace in the jungle. Jhin, wherever he is. But every time I've seen Aomina get the Jhin, I feel like Sky just loses instantly, because they need him in the late game team fights to be in the main carry, kind of like Artemis functions for Cerberus, but a little bit differently, maybe a little bit more lane focused from time to time. But this Jhin pick for Aomina, every time I see it, it doesn't work out. And then the Grace for Drugtha starves him of any early game impact, in my opinion, and giving the Viego a free early game is very strange to me. So maybe Thana, maybe you have a different look on these two champions, because I'm just very biased against them. But to me, they lack agency for the Grace in the early game and for the Jhin in the late game on these two very important players.
Yeah, I think Jhin is just really good in this Jinx lane matchup, at least. And in the later stages, with Jhin, you have always this utility ADC who can just engage for his team. And if the other players in the team like play it correctly, get maybe a lead, and then with those slows, with this engage, can take over the team fight, then Jhin is a really great pick. But in this case, like, Grace didn't really got a lead, and Midland didn't got a lead, and maybe Renekton had a small lead, but every time he tried to engage on on Artemis. He just flashed away, had a Zonias in the last team fight, and flashed after that, and just got peeled so good that in those team fights you really would like to have a stronger ADC. But I think it wasn't the Jhin problem, because the other could have done it better, and he just tries to enable them. And maybe it's not his role as a player, and maybe he normally plays other stuff, then they need to turn him around. But I think that the Jhin pick isn't that bad, in my opinion.
Rebel, to look more onto the Graves. I know you condone a lot when it comes to Drakthar. What about this Graves performance, though?
I will always condone Drakthar Graves, but if it's not something that will work to the function that we are looking for from the side of Burst the Sky, then it just can't operate properly, right? Like a game like that where you want to be able to accelerate, you have to find ways to scrap, and they just couldn't force it if they have the the Sylas remaining in the laning phase against an Orianna for the entire time. And Graves isn't exactly the champion that you're going to pick when you want to force, and you want to be able to make sure that you're going to have all that. So I think that was a big problem, is that Drakthar oftentimes finds himself as the role of the person initiating some of the skirmishes and the fights to get these early game advantages. So putting him on something farming like a Viego or a Graves doesn't really kind of continue that train of thought for Sky. And it kind of forces other members of the team to really pick up the slack, which they haven't shown the ability to do quite yet. So until they figure that out, no more Graves, no more Viego, get him Lee Sin, get him something that he can attack with.
Yeah, and with this series now, Cerberus move on to 2 and 1, so back into players' positions. Sky dropped down to 1 and 2. Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the whole league. We've seen 2 days with very stacked schedules, and some teams even playing 2 series before other teams have even shown their faces. A little bit weird how the VCS does things. So we haven't seen Luxury at all. We haven't seen Saigon Buffalo and SPTC at all the whole week. 3 teams of our 8 teams. So we're going to see those teams. Very different standard, very different, just overall look. So maybe to close out the day, we have Luxury against SPTC tomorrow. Thoughts on the series? Who's gonna win this one? Let's start with you, Thana.
Yeah, I don't really quite know any of those teams. I know that in Luxury there's like Killer Queen, and he is a really good Lee Sin player apparently, so that's something. But on the other side, I think both teams look like to be some middle of the pack teams, and SBTC maybe the bottom tier team, but it's maybe too early to say that because it's just their third game then. So, but we will see. I think that Luxury could have the upper hand in this matchup.
And for the last matchup of the week, Team Secret against Saigon Buffalo. I want to play another quick little game. Don't predict the outcome. We can do that tomorrow on the desk. We need to leave a little bit of the job still for the analysts. I'm going to ask you, Rebel, between Team Secret and Saigon Buffalo, which of the 2 teams is more overrated or overtalked in between our VCS English staff?
Oh, goodness gracious. As much as I want to load Milky into a cannon and fire him into the sun here for how much shit he's talked about Team Secret being one of the best in the league, I won't, because the correct answer is Saigon Buffalo. If you want to hear perhaps it's a fire opinion, something we've been missing in the VCS, because I know Yolway and Karex, you guys have been around since like 2018, 2019. The thing that was missing from the VCS for such a long time was a mid-tier team, right? Like we had GAM, and eventually we had Flash, and they were the best teams, and then everyone else was just competing for the rest of the playoff spots, but none of them had a chance. Saigon's the first team that's come along that's like, they can beat the best teams, but they can also beat the worst teams. And we've been like, oh, they're a top team because of it. Nope. They are a mid-tier team. They are the first mid-tier team in the VCS. And I'll stand by that now. I am willing to support them day in and day out because they're my favorite team, but they are a mid-tier team. They are overrated beyond belief.
Okay, there is some words of truth, I think, spoken by one of the Saigon Buffalo supporters. I think Rebel and I am competing for #1 Buffalo support. But I think that's going to close out this day today. I want to ask you, Tharnat, because you are our guest today. Where can we find more of you? Where are you going? Where can viewers catch you in the next, I don't know, week, month, whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah, you can catch me live on Fresh Tana on Twitch sometimes when I cast in German, for example. Like I will cast some Prime League games there. But other than that, just follow me on Twitter to see when I'm casting. I will most likely retweet stuff. So if you want to catch me, you can catch me if you follow me on Twitter, I guess.
And as we're already at it, Rebel, if you want to shout out anything, please do so. We're going to see you tomorrow, I believe, but still.
I'm actually not on for the first time of the split tomorrow.
Okay, so even better timing then. If you want to promote anything.
Today at 6 hours from now, I'm doing Collegiate League of Legends. If you want to watch two of the best collegiate teams in the best conference in North America, you're welcome to stop by.
Oh, that's interesting. So, everyone who wants a little bit more, are you casting alone, as you've done before?
And I'll have a partner, one of the LFL English casters is joining me for that one.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so if you want more VCS of the VCS English team at least, in 6 hours you can watch some collegiate, and of course in less than 24 hours, probably 20 hours at this point, you can watch the last day of the week. We have 2 more matches, 2 best of 3s, then every team will have played 3 series, so we can actually make some good comparisons coming into the next week. I hate these half weeks, but after 2 we can actually get to a nice conclusion at the early stages of the split. But that's it for today for us. You know how to support us. Subscribe, follow, donate, all that stuff. Come into our Discord, of course, for more cool discussions, to meet some of the players. We have Aumine, Yoshino, of course, Hankei is there. We have many more players that I don't all remember. Divkit, I believe, is there as well. So if you want to get a glimpse into the lives of the VCS pros, you can actually come over here and experience some of that in English. And with that, we're out for today. See you tomorrow, and stay tuned.
Legends never die when the world is